My retirement Monte Carlo simulation shows that I have a 30% chance of failure in retirement. Should I be worried? What should I do? And what does that actually mean? My name is Derek Delaney. I'm a certified financial planner, and these are the type of conversations and questions I answer for my clients for a living. So if you're new to the retirement planning world, or you're somebody that's getting ready to retire, chances are you will very soon see a Monte Carlo simulation run on your behalf to help you try to quantify if you are likely to have success or failure in retirement. So what is a Monte Carlo simulation? Well, a Monte Carlo simulation is basically a computer generated model that simulates future projected retirement experiences you could have based off of the specific assumptions you put into the model. And then that Monte Carlo simulation pumps out different rates of return experience you could have in retirement. And in the end, it shows you whether your specific assumptions, given those specific rates of return experiences you encounter in retirement, will get you to the end of your plan with money left over or not. If there is money left over in your investment or bank accounts, that is considered a success. If there is no money left over and the plan fails, that is considered a failure. And all those simulations are run over and over and over again based off of those different rates of return experiences you might encounter in your future retirement based off of the assumptions we use, which is your future expected spending, your life expectancy, different inflation sequences, and obviously those different rates of return experiences you could have in retirement. And over those different simulations, it shows you the percentage chance of you making it to the end of the plan while having money left over, or making it to the end of the plan where you have no money left, which is considered a failure. And then it simplifies it and says, hey, 70% of the time is a success based off of this model. And 30% of the time, you will experience failure, meaning that you're going to run out of money. And there are a number of different retirees all over the country who use these Monte Carlo simulations to make very big and important decisions when it comes to retirement without understanding the drawbacks of the Monte Carlo simulation or the features of the simulation that you need to be aware of that could be misleading. So we're going to jump into and talk about some of the reasons why the Monte Carlo simulation, specifically for retirement planning, could force retirees into making decisions that ultimately aren't best for them. So the first piece of the Monte Carlo simulation that comes up short for pre-retirees or those newly in retirement is it does not model very well or show very well the severity of failure for those simulations that end up proving the retiree is going to run out of money. And what I mean by severity of failure is that what if you do run out of money in retirement? That situation is going to mean different things for different retirees. For example, let's just say you're somebody who has a really nice pension and a strong Social Security check in retirement, which creates 95% of the income you live off of. And the other 5% is the money you take from your portfolio every year. Well, if you get to the end of life and you run out of money, your income will only drop by 5% in that situation. So your severity of failure, how bad it's going to hurt, is not very bad at all. That, from a worst case scenario standpoint, is a trade-off I know many retirees would take. On the flip side of that, what if you're somebody where 95% of your income in retirement is driven by the amount of money you take out of your portfolio? Well, if it turns out that you're 85 years old and you're expected to run out of money 30% of the time, that risk is heightened for that individual because if you run out of money, all of your income drops to zero, and that's not a situation anybody wants to be. So a 30% failure means different things from a severity standpoint, given the specifics of the individual retiree we're talking about. The next area where Monte Carlo simulations fall short is the flip side of the coin, and that is when it talks about success rate. So I have had many clients in my firm when we talk about Monte Carlo simulations go, I feel very, very comfortable if we can hit that 100% probability of success, meaning that over all of those simulations, 100% of the time I make it to the end of life or the end of my plan and I don't run out of money. Well, that is great, but there is a tremendous trade off getting your plan to that point. And that trade off is the lost experiences, or frankly, just the underspending you are boxing yourself in a corner with when it comes to your retirement. Meaning that even high periods of inflation and low rates of return, you are basically guaranteeing that you are never going to run out of money, regardless of what happens, best and worst case scenario. Well, that is going to mean that you are going to have to sacrifice a lot, and specifically sacrifice a lot early in retirement when it comes to spending and enjoying your money and doing the things you probably always thought you wanted to do. So even though 100% probability of success sounds great and it could provide you with comfort and peace of mind, just know that you are probably very, very underestimating the likelihood of you probably being able to spend more in retirement for that sense of safety long term. And is that truly a trade off? And is that truly a success when you look at somebody's retirement and the goals they have in retirement that they're probably not going to be able to accomplish just because they lean more on the side of safety, which is what that 100% of success rate means in the Monte Carlo simulation projections. So best case scenario is you make it through retirement and not have any issues with your money. And it shows that 100% of the time that is truly going to be the fact. Well, if that really is the outcome, it means you're probably sacrificing a lot of the benefits on the front end when it comes to your retirement. Another area where the Monte Carlo simulation can come up short and not produce the type of information we're actually looking for from a retirement planning standpoint is those different variations or those different rates of return experiences you could have in retirement are completely variable. They don't do a very good job of focusing in on a higher probability of return experiences given the economic conditions we're experiencing today. Where if we're in a period where we're just coming off of a huge recession and a big pullback in investment markets, there is a higher probability of experiencing better rates of return after that specific period than poor rates of return, where a traditional Monte Carlo simulation will not create those return experiences based off of those specific probabilities. Something like a regime-based Monte Carlo simulation would be a lot better given that type of scenario, where we would look at specific periods in the past that have similar or dissimilar economic situations that we're in today, and then use the rates of return that were produced during those similar situations earlier in the Monte Carlo simulation within that regime-based model, where the traditional Monte Carlo simulation just does not have the capability of doing that. So the rate of return experience is not very focused, and it does not take into account the specific economic context we're in today and similar economic contexts we've experienced in the past, and the rates of return those similar experiences have produced, and then using those similar rates of return in the first part of retirement or the first part of the simulation for those specific retirees. So Monte Carlo simulations can't get focused and they can't target those specific randomized rates of return that are most likely to happen given the economic context we're in today. And then finally, probably the biggest or the reason why, from the grand scheme of things, Monte Carlo simulation information can be unreliable or where it can come up short is it does not provide any context of means of adjustments that retirees can make along their path of retirement if the chance of them hitting some sort of failure in the future continues to increase. So the example I like to use in this situation is, what if you're driving down the highway at 60 miles an hour and all of a sudden half a mile away you're on a flat road, you see that the road is closed. Well, most people in that situation will start slowing down. They will approach that road closure and they will make an adjustment. They will either figure out a different route or they will turn around and go back. Most sane people will not just barrel through 60 mile an hour through that road closed sign, hoping for the best on the other side. Retirement works the same way, where most retirees can see that failure is in their future, especially if they're working with a competent financial planner, and they will make adjustments along the way to reduce the probability of that failure actually happening. So, in a traditional Monte Carlo simulation that shows a 70% chance of success and a 30% chance of failure, well, that assumes on that 30% chance of failure that there are no adjustments made along the way. Another common scenario, too, that a Monte Carlo simulation likes to bake in is it doesn't factor in changes in spending that naturally occur as retirees get older. So, most people have heard the different phases of retirement being the go go years, slow go years, and no go years, which essentially match the spending retirees typically have at specific ages in retirement. Where when you're newly retired and you're younger and healthy, you're probably spending a lot more money than when you're 89, 90 years old and your lifestyle just isn't as expensive because you're not doing as much considering your age and health at that time. So the adjustments that you can make as you get closer to failure aren't factored into a traditional Monte Carlo simulation. And for most Monte Carlo simulations, it's not the spending changes that naturally occur in retirement are not factored in as well, which can make or skew those success and failure percentages of a traditional Monte Carlo simulation over a long retirement period. So if there are a lot of failures or there are a lot of shortfalls to the traditional Monte Carlo simulation, should it be used at all? And my answer to that is absolutely, because it is a tool amongst other tools that you should have and utilize when appropriate within the planning process of retirement. But it absolutely should not be the end all final decision making factor when it comes to your retirement because of all the downfalls and the way that information can be misleading long term for a typical retiree. So if you were somebody that's using the Monte Carlo simulation to determine when you can retire and the probability of your retirement being a success, my advice to you is you should probably dial in that analysis a little bit more and use the Monte Carlo simulation in tandem with other financial or retirement planning strategies to make sure you are encompassing holistically everything you need to make the final decision when it comes to retirement as complete as you possibly can. All of that can be very, very confusing and it can be very, very complex. So if you're looking for a financial planner to help with those type of decisions early in retirement and throughout retirement, that is specifically the type of work I do for my clients. So if you're interested in learning more about that, click on the link below, schedule your free consultation, and I'd be happy to talk more about that in regards to your specific retirement, near term and long term. Until that future conversation, happy retirement planning.